Hello, my dear students. I hope you're all doing good and studying at home. Now we are almost at the end of the chapter Nationalism in India. In the last video, we discussed about the civil disobedience movement, how the movement started, where it started, okay, who were the people who participated in the movement. That was basically what we learned in the last video. Now in this video, we shall be talking about the limitations of the civil disobedience movement. Now we all know that the civil disobedience movement was supposed to be a mass movement, an all India movement where all social groups, all kinds of people living in India were supposed to join the civil disobedience movement. However, not all social groups were moved by the abstract concept of Swaraj. Okay, that means all the people that were there in India, all the social groups were not, moved by the concept of Swaraj. Okay, and that is why their participation in the civil disobedience movement was very, very limited. And basically, that's the reason why the movement did not turn out to be very, very fruitful as Gandhiji had thought it would be. Okay, so Gandhiji सोचेको थियो this movement would be very, very effective, it would be very fruitful, but the civil disobedience movement could not bear the results that Gandhiji had thought it would bear. There were two social groups, especially the untouchables and the Muslim population, who did not participate in the civil disobedience movement with the same enthusiasm or the same energy like the others. Let's understand the reason why. All right, so in India there were certain group of people, a certain caste that were termed as the untouchables, especially Hindu society ma a certain caste ko people like हामीले untouchables भनेर identify गरेको थियो. Okay, and these untouchables, they were called the dalits or the oppressed. Now Mahatma Gandhi, he called these untouchables as Harijans or the children of God. Okay, and Mahatma Gandhi, he was against the system of untouchability. Okay, so Hindu society ma this practice of untouchability that was there, Gandhiji was strictly against it. Okay, he has said that my fight against untouchability is a fight against the impure in humanity. So he felt that untouchability, it is not a good practice, it's a sin. Alright, so that is what Gandhiji believed, and that is the reason why Gandhiji worked for the elimination of untouchability from our society. Okay, the Hindu society especially, जहाँनिर चाहिँ untouchability एकदमै practice गर्थ्यो. Gandhiji, he worked to remove this practice from the society. He organized satyagrahas to secure them entry into the temples, access to the public wells, tanks, roads and schools. So the lower caste people who were classed as the untouchables, everything was separate for them in the society. Okay, that means they were not treated as equals. Okay, so त्यसले गर्दाखेरि higher caste को लागि separate temples हुन्थ्यो. There used to be a separate temple for other untouchables. Okay, even the public facilities such as the wells, okay, tanks, all right, roads, even the schools used to be separate for the untouchables. All right, so Gandhiji, he persuaded the upper caste people, the upper caste Hindus, okay, especially to change their heart and give up the sin of untouchability. So Gandhiji, he made an effort, okay, to convince the higher caste Hindus, okay, the higher caste people, Gandhiji tried to convince them that untouchability is a crime, okay, it's a sin, it's an offense, all right, and this should not be there in our society. Okay, people need to change their heart for the untouchable. They should not be discriminated. They should not be denied of their rights. They should be treated equally. This is what Gandhiji tried to persuade to the upper caste people. So because of this system of untouchability that was there in our society, the Dalits or the oppressed class, they always remained backward. Okay, उनीहरू सधैँ नै के भयो एकदमै backward भयो. They had no access to education, okay, and their condition was very pathetic in the society. Okay, Gandhiji and many other social reformers, they tried to improve the condition of the Dalits or the oppressed classes by telling the people to change their attitude towards the untouchables. The Dalits, however, they were looking for a different solution to solve their problem and uplift themselves in the society. Okay, and these Dalits, they were of the opinion that if they get some kind of political empowerment, then they will be able to resolve their problems. Okay, that means Dalits are like a politically उनीहरूलाई केही powers दियो भने चाहिँ उनीहरूले आफ्नो problem आफै solve गर्नु सक्छ. This is what the Dalits believed. Hence, the Dalits, they now began to demand for reservation in educational institutions. Okay, so because they were always backward, they did not have education. All right, so now the Dalits, they started to demand for reservation in education institutions, as the schools, colleges, universities, ma reservation demand garnu thale. Okay, because they knew that if they have education, then they will be able to uplift them in the society. All right. The next thing that the Dalits demanded was a separate electorate in the council elections. Okay, politically, unale representation paunu parcha. That is what the Dalits believed. Okay, so they demanded that there should be a separate electorate for them in the council election. Unako lagi alage, seat hunu parcha. That is what the Dalits demanded. Okay, the participation of Dalit was, very limited in the civil disobedience movement, especially in regions like Maharashtra and Nagpur. Okay, किन यो जग्गाहरुमा चाहिँ because in these places the Dalit associations or the Dalit organization was very strong. So Dr. BR Ambedkar was the leader, or he was the main representative of the Dalits, who organized all the Dalits living in India in this organization or association that was called the Depressed Class Association in 1930. Okay, if you remember Dr. BR Ambedkar, we read about him last year in the chapter Constitution. Yes, he is the father of the Indian Constitution. He was the chairman of the drafting committee, right? So Dr. BR Ambedkar was the main, spokesperson or the main leader of the Dalits. Okay. Now, Dr. BR Ambedkar had also attended the second roundtable conference along with Mahatma Gandhi. And there, in the second roundtable conference, there was a clash between Mahatma Gandhi and Dr. BR Ambedkar. Now, Dr. BR Ambedkar, who was looking for a separate, political representation for the Dalits, he demanded for a separate electorate in the second roundtable conference. And the British government le ke gari to demand la accept pani gare. Now, Mahatma Gandhi was against it. Okay, because Mahatma Gandhi, he believed that if the separate electorate for the Dalits is given, then the process of integration of the society, this process would become slow. Okay, that means Mahatma Gandhi was trying to bring all the different social groups of India together, integrate, sabaiलाई unite गर्ने, that was the main intention of Mahatma Gandhi. All right, but if separate electorates are given to all social groups, Dalits lai diyo, Muslims lai diyo, भनेपछि के हुन्छ, this idea of bringing everyone together, this effort of bringing everyone together will not become very successful. Okay, Gandhiji will not be able to bring everybody together. Okay, unite garnu, that will not be possible. That is what Mahatma Gandhi believed. Okay, so when the demand of separate electorate for the Dalits was accepted by the British government, Mahatma Gandhi, he protested against it by going for a fast. Okay, so fasting garnu thale. Okay, and because of this, BR Ambedkar, he was forced to accept Gandhiji's position, and therefore Pune Pact signed भयो in September 1932 between Ambedkar and Mahatma Gandhi. Okay, now the Pune Pact, it gave the depressed class reserved seats in the provincial and the central legislative assembly. Alright, so Pune Pact le चाहिँ depressed classes हरूलाई reservations दिने भयो in the provincial and in the central legislative assembly. That means central council मा पनि and state councils मा पनि now के हुन्छ दलित्सहरूले के पाउँछ एउटा सेपरेट के पाउँछ reserved seats उनीहरूको लागि हुन्छ. This is what was the agreement that was made in the Pune Pact. Now these depressed classes, they are today known as the scheduled caste. Okay, but despite of this agreement in the Pune Pact, the Dalit movement, it continued to be apprehensive of the Congress-led national movement. Okay, the national movement, okay, the freedom movement in India, the movement lead गर्ने the main political party was Congress. All right, but even after this Pune Pact was signed, even after reservations were given to the Dalits or the oppressed classes, the Dalit they were not very eager to join Congress in the national movement. So the Dalits, they always felt that the Congress had always ignored them because they had a fear of offending the Sanatanis. Now, who were the Sanatanis? They were the conservative high caste Hindus. Okay, the Hindus, the high caste Hindus, जो एकदमै conservative थियो, those who had followed or practiced the system of untouchability for all this time. Okay, so Congress ले के हुन्छ, because Congress say they don't want to lose the support of the Sanatanis. The Congress ले जहिले पनि के गर्दैछ दलित्सहरूलाई के गर्छ इग्नोर गर्छ भनेर चाहिँ that is what the Dalits had always believed. Okay, and that is the reason why when the civil disobedience movement started, okay, when it was relaunched, the participation from the the Dalits or the oppressed classes was quite less. They did not participate very enthusiastically in the movement. Now the other group of people whose participation was quite limited in the civil disobedience movement was the Muslims. Okay, now the Muslim political organization, especially after the withdrawal of the non-corporation Khilafat movement, they always felt alienated from the Congress. Okay, Congress देखि उनीहरु के हुन थाल्यो एकदमै टाढो हुन थाल्यो because Congress had called off the non-corporation Khilafat movement. Okay, so non-corporation Khilafat movement जुन चाहिँ छ त्यो चाहिँ गान्धीजीले बीचमा after the Chauri Chaura incident he had called off the non-corporation Khilafat movement. All right, and because of that the Muslim जुन चाहिँ group छ, the Muslim population चाहिँ इन्डियामा, they felt alienated from the Congress. That means they were not in the same page. Okay, they were not together. Now in the mid 1920s, Congress became more close to the Hindu Mahasabha. Okay, Hindu Mahasabha was a Hindu party. Okay, and Muslim League was a Muslim party thing. All right, so my 1920s ma, okay, 1920s ma, Congress became very close to the Hindu Mahasabha, and it became the distance between the Muslims and the Congress party widened. Okay, the Hindu and the Muslim relationship, it became worse day by day. Okay, each group organized religious processions with a militant fervor, provoking the Hindu-Muslim clashes and riots. Okay, so these Hindus, they used to organize their own processions, religious procession. The Muslim used to organize their own religious procession, and they were like never together. They were always fighting against each other. There was a lot of clashes. There was a lot of riots between the Hindus and the Muslims. Okay, and because of these riots, okay, what we see is that the relationship between these two communities, that is the Hindus and the Muslims, it became worse and worse year after year. Now, many efforts were made to reunite the Hindus and the Muslims. Okay, so Congress and the Muslims, they tried to renegotiate their terms. Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who was the main leader of the Muslim League, Okay, he was even ready to give up the demand of a separate electorate. Okay, second roundtable conference ma, even Muhammad Ali Jinnah had demanded for a separate electorate for the Muslims, but now he was ready to give up the demand of a separate electorate if the Muslims were assured reserved seat in the Central Assembly and representation in proportion to population in the Muslim dominated provinces. So many efforts were made to reunite the Hindus and the Muslims. So negotiations were taking place. Okay, so they were trying to bring the Hindus and the Muslims together, reuniting them. But in 1928, in the All Parties Conference, M.K. Jayakar, who was one of the members of the Hindu Mahasabha, he opposed the demand of Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Okay, so Muhammad Ali Jinnah ko jun चाहिँ डिमान्ड छ, okay, जुन चाहिँ उसको request छ, okay, of giving reserved seats to the Muslims in the Central Assembly and representation in the Muslim dominated provinces, that was opposed by M.K. Jayakar of the Hindu Mahasabha in 1928 at the All Parties Conference. Okay. So there was a lot of distrust that was developing between the two communities. The Hindus were not ready to trust the Muslims. The Muslims, on the other hand, they were not ready to trust the Hindus. And because of this, the Muslim League, they did not respond to the call for a united struggle. So when the civil disobedience movement was, called, है यो युनाइटेड स्ट्रगलमा मुस्लिम लिगले यसमा के गरेन, पार्टिसिपेट गरेन. द मुस्लिम्स वे कन्सर्न्ड अबाउट द स्टेटस अफ मुस्लिम एज अ माइनोरिटी इन इन्डिया. Okay, and their fear was that because they are in minority, because the Hindus are in majority, the culture and the identity of the minority groups, it will be submerged under the domination of the Hindu majority. Okay, so that was the fear of the Muslims. They feared that Hindus, because they are in majority, they will dominate the Muslims because the Muslims are in minority. Okay, so whatever unako culture cha, unako identity cha, that will be suppressed by the group that is in majority. That is what the Muslims believed. Okay, and this is how the gap between the Hindus and the Muslims, it became wider and wider. Okay, so much wide that later on there had to be a partition between the Hindus and the Muslims, and thus Pakistan had to be created. Now we come to the last topic, that is the sense of collective belonging. So the India that we know of today, it was not always the same. That means 1947 ko agadi, India was not the same way as we see it today. The feeling of unity amongst the people was not there. Okay, different parts of India, different kinds of people, there was no sense of connection or no sense of unity amongst the different group of people that were living in India. So nationalism, it spreads when people begin to believe that they are all a part of the same nation, but this was not there before 1947. So how was it that we discovered this unity? Okay, today we are all united. All these people who are living in different parts of our country, different religious group, different communities, different culture, people, we all feel united today. But how was this feeling of unity developed amongst us? How was this feeling of nationalism developed in us? Let us learn that in this topic. So in 2019, this question was asked, how had a variety of cultural process developed a sense of collective belongingness in India during the 19th century? Explain with example. Another question that was asked from this section was, history and fiction, folklore and songs, popular prints and symbols, they all played an important part in making of nationalism in India. Support the statement. So these were the two questions that has been asked from this section. So it's a very important section. Let's see now how this idea of nationalism was created amongst the Indians. So this sense of collective belonging that we have today, it was developed during our experience of united struggle. So we were all fighting against the same imperial power, and that is British. Okay, so the British go against ma when we were, waging a war, when we were fighting, when we were struggling. Okay, it was during this time that we developed this feeling of collective belonging. Okay, another thing is that the culture of a country, they have also played a very important role in developing this sense of collective belonging. Okay, other than culture, the history and the fiction, the folklores and the songs of India, okay, of different religious group, of different communities of India, they have also played a very important role. Okay, in the same manner, prints and the different symbols that were used during the time of freedom struggle, they also contributed in developing a sense of collective belonging amongst the Indians. Now, in the 20th century, the identity of India came to be visually associated with the image of Bharat Mata. Indian subcontinent was personified with the concept of Bharat Mata. Okay, so like we have read in the earlier chapter, Europe Mapini, the female figure was used as a, personification of nation. All right, so in India also, the image of Bharat Mata, okay, was used to identify India. Image of Bharat Mata and the song of Vande Mataram was created by Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay. The image of Bankim Chandra is given there. You can see it. And this song, Vande Mataram, it was very, very widely sung during the Swadeshi movement in Bengal and everywhere in India. So when we were fighting for our freedom against the British rule, this song Vande Mataram became very, very popular, and everybody was like, singing this song. Okay, and when singing this song, the feeling of patriotism was also spreading. Okay, feeling of nationalism was also spreading. Okay, Abindranath Tagore, he painted his famous image of Bharat Mata, that's given in your book in figure 12. And in this painting, Bharat Mata, it is shown as an ascetic figure who is very, very calm, who is very composed, who is very divine and very, very spiritual. Okay, so devotion to this mother figure came to be seen as an evidence of one's nationalism. Okay, so everybody was now, devoting themselves to this female figure. Okay, and this is how, the feeling of nationalism. Ideas of nationalism also developed through a movement to revive Indian folklores. Now, folklores banigo, the old, stories, okay, the stories which are passed on from one generation to another, folklores, dante katha. So, the nationalists or the leaders in India, they now started to feel that, folk tradition that is there in our culture, okay, in India, folk tradition that has to be preserved, because folk tradition, it is our national identity. It's our identity, and we should not lose it. Okay, and we should take pride in our past. All right, and this, has to be preserved so that the future generation can also listen to these stories and they can feel a sense of pride in their past. That is what the nationalists, they started to believe, and henceforth उनीहरूले folk tradition, folklores, folk songsहरू भयो, folk storiesहरू भयो, त्यसलाई preserve गर्नु थाल्यो. Okay, and Rabindranath Tagore, he was the one who began collecting different kind of ballads, nursery rhymes, and all these mythical stories. Okay, and this is how Indians began taking pride in the nation. In Madras, Natesa Shastri, this was another person who published 4 volumes of this Tamil folk tales. Okay, and that was called the Folklore of Southern India. He also believed that folklore was a national literature, and it was the most trustworthy manifestation of people's real thoughts and characteristics. Okay, so Natesa Sastri pani, he also contributed to preservation of this folklores. Hey, र उसले folklores एउटा भोल्युम नै बनाएको छ, जहाँनिर चाहिँ उसले साउथको जुन चाहिँ स्टोरिजहरू छ है, स्पेसली तमिल folklores उसले एउटा कलेक्सनको फर्ममा, that is called the Folklore of Southern India, published गरेको थियो. Okay, and he also believed that folklore it is a national treasure. Okay, and this folklore it should be preserved because it is our identity, it describes our past, and it also expresses the real thoughts and the real characteristics of people. This is what he believed. All right, so this is how folklore it played an important role in the spread of nationalism and in the spread of collective feelings amongst the different group of people living in India. Now the next one is the nationalists. They used many kind of icons, symbols are used to unify the people of India or to inspire the feeling of nationalism among the people. So some of these icons and symbols that were used was the tricolor flag. Okay, now Bengal ma, when this Swadeshi movement was taking place, there a tricolor flag was developed. Okay, it was designed. So originally this tricolor flag that was designed in Bengal, it had red, green and yellow color, and there was this 8 lotuses in the middle, and this 8 lotuses that represented the 8 provinces of British India. Okay, and there was also a crescent moon that represented the Hindus and the Muslims. So in this way, symbols या icons को use को through पनि nationalist they tried to unite the different kind of people in India. Gandhiji also, he designed the Swaraj flag. Okay, the flag is given there. Okay, it has tricolors again, but the tricolors here are saffron, white and green, and there is also a charkha, okay, in the middle. Now Gandhiji le यो flag design गरेको थियो. This was called the Swaraj flag, and it was adopted by the Indian National Congress in 1931. Now in this flag, the spinning wheel represented Gandhiji's philosophy of self-help. Recreating history was another means of creating a feeling of nationalism. They wrote about the glorious developments in ancient times when art and architecture, science and mathematics, religion and culture, law, philosophy, crafts and trade had flourished. Okay, so जुन चाहिँ Indian history छ, the history of India was very very rich. Okay, the art and architecture, the science and the mathematics that was developed in India, the religion and the culture of India, the law and the philosophy, the crafts and the trades. Okay, that was a very rich history of India, and that has to be written down. And the nationalists, they felt that this history of India can also help to unite the different kind of people living in India. So hence unale Indian history like Igontalio, they started to write down the glorious history of India, all those glorious development that were taking place before the British came to India, that was written down. These nationalist history, they urge the readers to take pride in India's great achievement in the past and struggle to change the miserable condition of life under the British rule. Okay, so all these histories, national histories of India, the readers are like urge career to take pride in their nation, in the history of their nation, in the achievement of their nation, and that now they have to change the miserable condition of the India that has come into place under the British rule. So whatever efforts the nationalists were making to bring all these people of India together, it was not problem free. Of course there were many problems. When the past being glorified was Hindu, when the images celebrated drawn from Hindu iconography, the people of the other communities, they felt left out. Whatever the nationalists were using to glorify the nation, everything was related with the Hindus. Okay, so the other religious communities that were there in India, they started to feel left out. They felt that only Hindus are only given a lot of importance. The other religious communities, they are not given importance. So that was also a problem that the nationalists faced when they were trying to spread this feeling of nationalism, spread this sense of collective belongingness in the people. So it was not hurdle free. Problems and there were many problems that they had to face when they were trying to bring the people of India together. Okay, so it was through history, through art and architecture, through the folklores and the folk tales, through songs भयो, okay, through iconsहरू भयो, that different nationalist they tried to bring the people of India together, okay, and tried to spread this feeling of nationalism, patriotism in every people that were living in India. So with this we come to the end of the chapter and the end of the syllabus from history. So we can see that in this chapter, Nationalism in India, we read about how the growing anger against the colonial government was bringing the different groups and different classes of people in India together in a common struggle. Okay, and how the freedom struggle began in the first half of the 20th century. The Congress under Mahatma Gandhi tried to organize the different, groups of people in India in one movement for freedom. Okay, and through such movements, the nationalists they tried to, forge the idea of national unity. But as we have seen in this chapter, diverse groups and diverse classes they participated in this movement with different kind of aspirations. Okay, everybody had different kind of expectations. All right, and the Congress they continuously they tried to resolve the differences of the people. Okay, they tried to bring in the different groups together in a united struggle.